Good to see you. So let's be seated. And today, in our overview of the Bible, we have, I don't know, for me it's probably one of the most difficult books. The difficulty of the Song of Songs, or sometimes it is published or titled as the Song of Solomon, which also makes perfect sense. And we'll come back to this in a second with all the titles and all of that kind of stuff. The difficulty is how do we interpret the song? How do we read it? Is it about Solomon and a Shulamite, a guy, a particular king in the history of Israel, and his wife? Or there is something more behind this love story? And usually then, people go into this kind of schematic. I got it from one of our commentaries. To say one word about the commentaries. 3 weeks ago, we had Proverbs. Who remembers how many chapters in Proverbs we have? 31. Okay? It's very easy to remember. Because if you choose to read Proverbs each chapter by day, in any given month, you can have a chapter by day, even in the 31 day. Okay? So even the months like this, like August, at the very end, we can read the 31st chapter. This is a great commentary by Andrew Steinman. He is one of our professors. He also is one of the guys who were engaged in a biblical translation project. He and his colleagues created Christian Standard Bible. I know it's not English Standard Bible, so it's a little bit different, but it's very interesting. My point is, what I wanted to show to you is in our Concordia commentaries, we have this fat commentary on Proverbs. Okay? So Proverbs 31 chapter, as we said, and it's about 700 pages. Okay? Okay, how many chapters do we have in the Song of Songs? 8. That's the commentary for Song of Songs. Okay? It's only 1,300 pages. Okay? So if you want to know just the beginnings, the touch base stuff about Song of Songs, you need to memorize this book. Okay? I know we can laugh about that. The book is written by Christopher Mitchell. He is actually, as far as I remember, let me check it. He is an Old Testament CPH editor for the whole series. Okay? So, guy knows what he's talking about. The cool thing about that is, so out of the book, these many pages are introduction. Okay? And then he goes into the text. Okay? And it's really great. I mean, seriously, those introductions is thematical connections, the thematical connections with New Testament, thematical connections of Lutheran teaching. Like, for example, the piece that I used for Lutheran teaching and the Song of Songs is mostly borrowed from here. Okay? Kind of not everything, but kind of like, summarized. Let's do it this way. Some themes, eschatological ideas. How do you apply it even in pastoral ministry, in the ministry of the church? When you talk to husbands, when you talk to wives, when you talk to children, when you talk to pastors. What kind of hymns are related to the Song of Songs. With hymns, the only problem is this commentary was published a few years before we had our Lutheran service book. So if any of you remember Lutheran worship, the blue hymnal, that's where he goes from. He bases his comparisons of the hymns, but even that is helpful. Some of those hymns are not included in the Lutheran service books. Lutheran service book, some of the hymns that we have more connection with the Song of Songs that he did not discuss. But he gives an idea. So it's really great commentary. And now, I kind of borrowed this chart from him, but then improved it. And I will tell you where I improved it. So, we have an idea how to interpret the Song of Songs. On one hand, it is the song about Solomon and his wife, the Shulamite. But when we put it into theological and historical context, we understand that there is a bigger picture behind it. This song teaches us actually how the Lord, this what is called tetragrammaton, four-letter name of God, Yahweh, this unpronounceable name, is this God, how he relates to his chosen people, Israel. So we have human marriage, but we also have covenant marriage between God and his people. Okay? But then, if we would stop only here, we would not be Christians. We can go down the foothill and turn left, and then there is this, Beit David, synagogue, and that would be a great place to talk about these things over there. We need to get further because we understand that incarnate Yahweh, the Yahweh that came in flesh, is Jesus Christ. And therefore, we can read the Song of Songs as a reflection between Christ and the church, which also, of course, establishes covenantal marriage. That's why we are constantly talking about marriage feast of the Lamb. Okay? We understand that there will be a moment when all of us, as the bride of Christ, will be invited and we will participate in this mystical covenantal union or reunion that we will expect to happen in heavens. But that's where I improved it. Okay, he stops here. But I think this is somewhat, it's not enough. Let's put it this way. Because from Ephesians 5, we know that there are direct parallels between a husband and Christ and woman and the church. In Ephesians 5, Paul teaches that as Christ laid down his life for the church, so the husbands should love their wives. Okay? So therefore, the Song of Songs should be, or could be and should be, a very great piece of biblical literature for a man and a woman. Or I probably should have erased it and say just husband and wife. That's better. So it's not for simply a man and a woman. It's husbands and wives. Okay? And that constitutes human marriage. But this human marriage is, again, based on the covenant marriage between Christ and the church, which is rooted in those pictures that we find in the scripture of Yahweh and Israel. And we have this example in Solomon and Shulamite. Okay? So all of this is connected. It's not only about Solomon. It's not just an example for our daily use. It's all of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 elements. All of those elements are included. Okay? We just need to see how they are connected. Now, let's go to the song, to your handouts. Sorry. Okay. The title is Song of Songs or Song of Solomon. And the reason is, if you open it up, verse 1, that's what it says. In verse 1, we see the Song of Songs, which is of Solomon's. So it can be, both names can be used, but Song of Songs is kind of, at least in my ear, is more prominent, though I know some of the translations of the Bible would use Song of Solomon. The date is around time of Solomon. Of course, there are people who teach that it was written way, way later, and Solomon has nothing to do with that. Okay, if you want to read about that, please pick up the commentary. You can find it in my office, and you just give $500 deposit, and then I will give it to you. And so I mean, we can chain it, to the wall, so nobody will take it. But you can read it, it's still available. He goes into very deep discussion why we need to and we should consider it a Solomonic time. It's just, to put it simple, non-Solomonic authorship creates more questions than Solomonic authorship. There could be some challenges. Why would that be a Solomon? But in reality, again, it's more problematic to see it as non-Solomon than to see it as a Solomon. Now, there is another great guy that I quite often borrow from, David Dorsey. He gives he wrote a book, it's called Literature Structure to the Old Testament. And he gives those kind of outlines. Sometimes I use them, and sometimes I, use and improve. This particular one I did not improve. So that's the outline for the book. So we have 7 blocks. Where beginning and the end and the middle parts toward the center are kind of matching up. In one, we have opening words of mutual love and desire, and we have closing words of mutual love and desire. Then we have in chapter 2, we have young man's invitation to a young woman, and this is matched by a young woman's invitation to a young man, in chapter 7 and the beginning of 8. Then in 3, there is a young woman's night search, and then there is again young woman's night search in 5 to 7. And in the middle, there is a central point. Their kind of consummation, their wedding day. And therefore, when we go into the themes of the book, when people hear the Song of Songs, usually, immediately, the word love comes to mind. Okay, it's about love. Yes, but first of all, we need to be very careful for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 is the usage of the word love in our culture. When we think about love, it's probably not exactly the same thing as they would say in those days. The word in Hebrew is ahava. The word love not necessarily means those feelings, though the book, as you know, it is very, about feelings and passions and all of that kind of stuff. But ahava by itself means more faithfulness than any kind of, butterflies, in heart or stomach or wherever you want to have butterflies. So that kind of things. The reality and the center of the book kind of shows it. The whole idea is not necessarily how they breathe so passionately toward each other. The whole idea is, through the whole book, they have few challenges. And the main idea is to come together. So I think the main idea of the book is kind of like this unity or attempt to be in union, attempt to create this moment of closeness, togetherness. I know it's probably a somewhat wrong word, but people who struggle with ESL can allow themselves to come up with their own words. So this unity and togetherness that they try to create is very important. But as I wanted to say, and I kind of stress it, it's a song of songs. Okay? So sometimes it kind of slips from our understanding. And we, especially in the, from the time of modernity, when Bible began to be available for many people, when you can buy X number of translations, you can read it and study it, and which is great. It's a blessing. I'm not denying the fact that it's really cool to have your copy of the Bible. And I know my son doesn't like it, but I do mark in my Bible. I not only mark in my Bible, I also glue things into the Bible, and then mark on those pages. Yeah, Sheila, really. Like what you have it probably in the folder. I don't have it in the folder. What I do is, like this is, I print them on one page on two sides. That's the introduction to Proverbs. And then all of that will be filled, trust me, just give me some time, and all of that will be filled with, over time. I'll write my notes that I think are valuable. But speaking of that, I understand why Lex is not really happy with marking in the Bible. Because he treats it as the Word of God. And I respect it. Therefore, recently I got a second Bible. I got a very small one, pocket one. I do not have it here. It's in my office. Which I am not going to write in. That's only for my devotional readings. For my personal devotional readings. Kind of like, I don't know how to, for personal devotional readings, yeah. Kind of like portals of prayer, but, portals of prayer, again, it's somebody else's devotions. That is the Word of God that I will use for my personal edification, But this is kind of, this edition of the Bible is more my tool, So, when we mark anything, the whole of that spiel was to say that sometimes we miss the idea of a song, and especially the Song of Songs. So it's like if you would think about the song that got every year a Grammy Award, okay? Something like that. This is so cool, so great. It's always top one in all the charts, okay? That's the Song of Songs. That's the idea of the title. And the thing behind it is we know that this is not one voice. There is a choir, or sometimes, you can think of that as an author, but there is he, there is she, there are those who support her, those who are kind of support him. So it's more like a performance, okay? It's a play, if you wish. As you probably know, that Shakespeare did not really write for us to read. All of his plays were originally written for a Globus theater, okay? They were first of all performed, and then people will, I want to read it more. Okay, then people made money out of that. That's so simple, money runs the world, Sorry. I know it's not spiritual to say that, but that's just reality of the things, that's what it is. So if people want to read it, somebody will find a way to publish it and make money out of that. So going back to this one, when we read the Song of Songs, we need to see those, where is he speaking? Where is she speaking? What kind of other voices we can see there? What kind of waves we can see in the book, okay? And that's very important. But all of this, so the book shows the gospel message can be presented as a beautiful and enigmatic opera, where visual and textual imagery reflects the theme or themes of the production. See, I think it was a cool phrase when I came up with that. So the main idea is it's good to study, but we need to try to visualize that, how it could have been performed, for example, for King Solomon. Okay? He wrote it, then he goes to the balcony of his palace, and somewhere down there they, build the stage and it's performed. It's given. Some of the things it would be very hard to perform. I didn't write it here, but one of my former teachers once said, maybe we need to treat Song of Solomon or Song of Songs as a dream. Because it's very often we see that especially she is dreaming. She is sleeping and she has those visions. And therefore, one thing goes into another. The parts of body are recreated or presented as either sheep on the hills, or as a dove, or some other imagery. So if we'll know any more about the function of dreams in our brain, maybe that will help us also to understand what do we find in the Song of Songs. And there is another important thing. At the very end of the main themes, I wrote that it is important level that we should not be neglected is eschatological earning of consummation. Especially if we see this progression. Solomon, Yahweh, Christ. And then this is reflected in us who are the readers. Same as in relation to Shulamite, Israel, who is like an example of Israel. But this Israel turns with Christ's coming, turns into the church. And now we have a reason for a godly wife to read it. This eschatology, so everybody knows what eschatology is, okay, right? Okay, eschatology, let me, just in case you don't know. Okay?
Big word.
Yeah, it's a fancy word.
It's kind of like tetragrammaton. It sounds like an alien robot from space.
Yeah, exactly. So,
I love that.
eschatology.
I love it.
Okay? At least you should understand what logy is, okay? That comes from logos, which is teaching. I mean, the word, technically it's a word, but it's teaching. So teaching about what? Okay? Eschaton is the last things. Okay, not necessarily last times, but it's all together. Okay? So it's a teaching about last things and last times. So what we expect in the after resurrection or in the resurrection. So when we put it together in chapter 1 and in chapter 8, let's read a couple verses. In chapter 1, verses 2 through 4. Let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine. Your anointing oils are fragrant. Your name is oil poured out, therefore virgins love you. Draw me after you, let us run. The king has brought me into his chambers. We can understand it, and we should, as Solomon writes about his wife, as Yahweh bringing his people into the courts of the temple. We can see that as Christ bringing his people in the church, into the communion of saints, as we have it in the creed. But we also need to understand that fully it will be realized, it will be fulfilled, only when we will meet with Christ after resurrection. Okay? So that should give us a proper perspective to see that it's already, as we usually say, and not yet. Okay, we have this double dimension. We have some fulfillments of those expectations, but not fully right now. And the book ends with similar ideas. So the verses 13 and 14 of chapter 8. He says, "O you who dwell in the gardens, with companions listening to your voice, let me hear it." And she responds, "Make haste, my beloved, and be like a gazelle or a young stag on the mountains of spies." Okay. Make haste, my beloved. Where else did we hear this kind of thing? At what? In Isaiah. But if you go to the very, very end, okay, of the Bible, very, very end, Revelation 20:22. What we have there is verse 16 and 17. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things for the church. I am the root and descendant of David, the bright and morning star. The Spirit and the bride says, come. Or actually, we can translate it as come fast, make haste. Okay? Again, it's the bride with the Spirit by her side is waiting for this moment that she can meet with the bridegroom, the Christ. Okay? So all of those themes should be understood both on practical and theological level, with an expectation to be fully fulfilled in the resurrection of the just, as our gospel reading for today says in Luke 14. The Song of Songs picks up some themes from other books. For example, of course, when we talk about man and a woman, basically every time when we see a man and a woman in the Bible, or especially husband and wife, we are somewhat giving a reflection on the sixth day of creation. Because it's not simply out of the blue we have that particular union of humans. We can have brothers, we can have sisters, but it is man and the woman that were first created, and it is woman who is given to a man as a response to God's observations. It's not good for man to be alone. Okay. I mean, it's great to have friends. It's great to have brothers and sisters. But especially those of you who are married, you know that there is no person who knows you better for your best and for your not best parts, but then your spouse, both husband and the wife. If the marriage is, developed properly, let's put it this way. The Song of Songs also continues the chain of songs, and especially songs that are delivered by women. Okay? We have few of them in 5 books of Moses. We have one where Miriam picks up the song that was actually composed by Moses, her brother, but she elaborates on that, and she also kind of invites other women into dancing. So they sing and dance. If Moses simply does things, Miriam, as a woman, beautifies them. She not only sings, she also dances. Okay? That's why usually, guys are those who, put the walls, put the windows, put the roof together. And it's women who bring the furniture, who bring the proper lights, who figure out what kind of color of the drapes should be, all of that kind of stuff. What kind of silverware we're going to use, what kind of china we're going to put, and so on and so forth. Does it fit the style or it doesn't fit the style? I mean, have you ever seen really many excited guys who are going through a dishes department in a store? Okay? No. You go somewhere, I didn't say there are none, I said many. Okay? See, listen carefully. I know what I'm saying. Most of the time. Usually. So, usually the guys are sitting somewhere, at the closest bed, in best bed in Milan, either read the magazine or just do me a favor, kill me now, I think they would make lots of money if they would have a coffee table at the entrance with sports magazine, cars magazines, some kind of Christian magazines, Christian rifle magazine, something like that, I don't know. And then, trust me, they would have more sales because men would be glad. They would be glad to spend money at this table. Free coffee, free, access to magazines, done. Sales are skyrocketing, okay? But seriously speaking, that's what it is. We have Moses who writes the song, and then Miriam elaborates on that. Then we have Barak who goes into the battle, and then Deborah who sings about that. She gives him a wise advice how to address the army of enemies. It's Judges 4 and 5. But it's Deborah who in chapter 5 sings about that. Then we have the story of Hannah, the mother of Samuel, the prophet Samuel, who changed the world. When she is not pregnant, she is simply very quietly praying. The praying in a way that her lips are kind of going up and down, and the high priest thinks that she is drunk. Okay, what kind of high priest is that who doesn't know how the prayer should look like? That's an important question for 1 Samuel. But then, when she gives birth and the child raised up and is almost ready to join the ministers of the court of the Lord, she bursts out in a song. It's, 2 Samuel chapter 2. You might want to read it. And actually, with the 2 Samuel of chapter 2, there are great parallels between 2 Samuel 2 and what we call Magnificat, the song that Mary sings when she is, when she knows what will happen with her and what kind of baby she'll give birth to. Therefore, the Song of Songs with many women voices, not only the leader, but those who listen to her, they also have a small part. It kind of is within this realm of many songs that are produced by women. And it's important to know. Now, there is a great part. We are not going to go through the whole list of that in the great detail. In the Lutheran teaching, so on one hand, we have confessional books that are grouped together, bound together under one cover. It's called Book of Concord. Book of Concord has not a single reference to the Song of Songs. I was somewhat surprised. I wasn't shocked because, whatever. I mean, they have their own reasoning. But I was somewhat surprised. Yet, we have a great theologian of 17th century, Johann Gerhard. He was a great theologian of Lutheran Orthodoxy. He was born in the very end of 16th century, but most of his work was done in 17th. That's a wrong dash. So it's 1582 and then 1637. So he was not born in 15 AD. Then he was baptized in 82 AD, and then he lived up to 1637. Okay, you got that part, right? So it's 1582. It's one date. So in his volume on theology, actually he gives a statement after statement where he actually goes through the Song of Songs and elaborates on images of the songs. I picked up just 3. And Mitchell, in his book, he goes into more. So I kind of just shortened it from here, and he shortened it from Gerhard. So that means that for Lutheran theology, this book is important. Let's see some of them. For example, when he reads Lily Among Thorns in 2:2, he kind of he interprets that. He means that the church is, on one hand, church is beautiful, but on the other hand, it should be separated from the sinful world, because we know where thorns are coming from. Okay? Remember how thorns appeared on the face of the earth. Thorns appeared as a result of the fall. Thorns and thistles, the earth or soil will produce for you. So Lily Among Thorns is this beautiful church, and he mostly relates it to church. Gerhard mostly relates it to church. So church is beautiful on one hand, but there is this scornful surrounding that she should be separated from. Therefore, just kind of jumping ahead, in the Lutheran hymnody, we have this beautiful hymn, "The Church is One Foundation." And that's where we have it. Okay? One of the stanzas is talking about the church being within the realm of those who are scornful wonder gatherers. Okay? Now, going back to the teaching. Point 2, church is a dove, or has eyes of a dove. And Gerhard explains it in the sincerity of the Spirit. And we kind of should remember this message that Jesus left to his 12 disciples before he sent them into the mission field, that you should be what? You should be wise as serpents, but you should be pure as doves. So when we see the church as a dove, we understand that this is sincerity of the Spirit, and also we also need to remember that the Spirit itself appeared as a dove during baptism of our Lord. So we are those who bear this sign of the Spirit, can be presented to the world as doves. Also, I like this one. Awesome as an army with banners. Okay? Yeah, I knew I can expect something from you. Yes, right. And he expresses it, Gerhard expresses it, the idea of the church militant, one who is constantly fighting with Satan. Not with humans around her, but with Satan as the one who presents the evil teaching, evil actions, and trying to seduce. But regardless of the outward appearance as disordered crowd, she isn't organized by the order from above. And that's true. You know, when I think about that kind of humbling thought on one hand, but also comforting. Because when we come to church, you know, our wonderful congregation or any other church, sometimes we see people who cannot agree with each other, who cannot find peace with each other for a variety of reasons. But especially during service, when all people kneel together confessing sins, or when all people come to communion rail together. That's a great kind of military sign of unity, that the church is united, but not by our strength, but by His grace. And because He invites us to partake His gifts. One more addition with the Lutheran hymnody, hymn 525, sometimes it's saying, even though it's from a different rubric, but sometimes it is saying for Advent. It talks about the mystic rose that Christ's teaching, and therefore the teaching of the church appears. And knowing that, it is also really cool to see that this emblem over there as a seal, as a sail. On the sail, it has a seal of Luther, which has the rose. I found his description. In his descriptions, he does not give the places of the Bible that he refers to, but I think in his mind, Luther's mind, it was this chapter 2, verses, I think it's 1 and 2, right?
1.
Yep, verse 1. I am a rose of Sharon, a lily of the valleys. I think he was referring to that when he thought of that rose, and sometimes we call it rose of Luther. And then there is a heart inside, and then there is a cross inside. Okay? We'll talk more about this particular symbol when we will have our Reformation Day weekend. So, as a relevancy, seeing images of God and Israel and Christ and the church in relationship with Him and her in the book, modern reader can have a blessing from the passionate words of the gospel with which God reaches out to us. The blossoming vineyard of the outreach should spread its branches, covering the whole earth with the protective shade of His life, being defendant from foxes of the outer world. Okay, questions or comments?